one side, somebody's chanting on another side, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Does that really, honest to goodness, solve any problems on the streets? And tempers were rising on both sides, as we have learned. And there was more violence. It has been documented in Charlottesville, okay, by police and by the protesters that were there. But the New York Times has picked up on this. You can check it out. Washington Post. It's in there that members of the press that were thinking that they were safer to be embedded with the counter-protesters, okay, they weren't embedded with the neo-Nazis and et cetera, the KKK. They were lashed in the head. They had, bashed in the head, blood from them because they were filming the opposing side there. And they said we're with the media. They had a right to be there to film this thing. And so that went down, and there were several from the opposing side that had baseball bats, had weapons, and they used them. They used them, folks, okay? If it's a peaceful protest, you don't bring those things with you. You don't bring them with you. You don't do that kind of thing. So, again, you're going to always get some bad things, but evil doesn't red out evil. It really doesn't. You don't change somebody's ideology by sitting there and bashing them over the head with a baseball bat or chanting you're going to hell. And even if it's true, you don't change anything. It doesn't change anything. This is not the sit-ins of the 60s. This is totally different times and totally different thing altogether. Again, if anybody can tell me what the sense or what good thing came out of this protest, please be the first to comment on our Facebook page today. What good was it? I hear the mother of Heather Heyer, she don't want to take the phone call of the president on here because apparently he thinks he's siding, which a lot of the liberal media believes that all of the Trump's followers are siding with the neo-Nazis and that he's just defending them. The last I checked, and I know it's so unusual, that Donald Trump is actually the president of all Americans, even if people don't claim him to be as their president. He is standing on the Constitution. It is something that protects us all. We have freedom of speech, and as annoying, as frustrating as all that is, I understand with these hate groups, it drives me crazy to hear the stuff that's poisonous out of their mouth. However, there's so much stuff from the left that makes me insane. The lies about Donald Trump, about putting him in the kennel with all these freaks of nature. Donald Trump didn't start Charlottesville. He didn't create the KKK. He doesn't hang out with them at high five at parties with David Duke. Who's exacerbating this fire, folks, is the alt-left. And let me just say, as dangerous as the alt-right. So maybe the chairman has something to do. Heather Heyer's mom, is she going to talk to Trump? We'll see what she's saying today. We dial her up here?
I have not. I did. When we got home from the funeral and reception, I was completely drained, and we had family gathered around. I had phone turned off. We had
it's okay.
We had Heather's dog who was not doing well. We took her to the vet, and so I didn't even turn my phone on until around midnight.
That's
and then I saw that his office had called about 3 times, and I had several meetings scheduled this morning.
Yeah.
One to set up the foundation for Heather's funds that have come in.
I see.
And so it feels awful, but I just haven't had time to talk to the president. But yes, he has reached out.
Okay, so we know that Heather Heyer's not taking the phone call, but understandable. She's grieving. But so many people have her ear saying, "Darn president, what he's done." All right, so let's go on with the Schultz comments. Howard Schultz, he's the chairman of Starbucks. He says, after the violence, President Donald Trump was blasted for putting the blame on both sides and saying both sides included very fine people. Schultz was not a member of either of Trump's two panels of business leaders that was dissolved Wednesday. Okay, they had to make that clear. And several CEOs stepped down in protest of Trump's comments. We know this. And he told his employees Tuesday that he'd let the actions and words of the president speak for themselves. Oh, it's ambiguous. Thanks. Okay. What we witnessed this past weekend is against every sense of what is right, he said. My fear is not only that this behavior is being given permission and licensed, but its conduct is being normalized to the point where people are no longer hiding their face. Telling employees he was speaking to them as an American, as a Jew, as a parent, as a grandparent, Schultz said, it's hard to remain optimistic about the country's future in the midst of such a storm, but he is still. Starbucks and Schultz have been outspoken on social issues, very much, as a Jew. Well, I wouldn't imagine that knowing that there was neo-Nazis there in Charlottesville protesting, but folks, nothing new. Beep, beep, news alert. Neo-Nazis have been in America for a long time. They protest. They write books. There's books in libraries about it. There's organizations all over the country. As much as it boils my blood, I don't like it. I don't seek it out. I don't hang out with them. I think that and folks, I just say this, the alt-left gave them more of a platform than they needed to have it. If you don't pay any credence to it, they're not going to have any media there. Go out there. It wouldn't have been a news event at all, but people had to go out there with baseball bats. And it's the lowest denominator. I mean, are folks just dumb? I know people meant well, and people do in our country meant well, and to go out and to speak their piece, to make their presence known, to show people that they stand up for their people. That's great. But the First Amendment gave them the right to do it just the way that you were able to go out and counter-protest the same way. And the same way that, abortion clinics are able to operate and so many other organizations are able to operate in this country that I disagree with. But I don't have time personally to go out to every abortion clinic, okay, that I don't think should be operating with taxpayer dollars or whatever. I don't agree with what they do, but I'm not going to be driving around one, hanging out there, high-fiving anybody that's going out there or yelling and screaming at them. It's not going to do anything other than aggravate me, raise my blood pressure. And I think that's what happened to a lot of people out there. I think it raised their blood pressure. But if, again, the counter-protesters didn't even show up, didn't give any credence, they got no airtime. It had been done. They would have exhausted themselves. But the more credence we put on this, that emboldens them in their message. It exacerbates it. Just like ISIS, of what a plague they are. The more credence we give it, we can't. It's an ideology, folks. And again, it's a poison in men's hearts, and it's a bad thing. It's a wrong thing. But there's not an easy answer to it. But reviewing it, in hindsight, it's 2020. There's several things that could have been done to avert this show-off that should not have taken place. We've gone through similar things and marches, et cetera, where police had to be dispatched for all different reasons for the protection of the people, mainly one group against the other. And I dare say, again, the blood, a lot of the Heather Heyer's blood is on local law enforcement officials. I'm sad to say, Yes, specifically the neo-Nazi did it, ran down. I will blame him 100%. But police sat back and watched both groups go at it and didn't do nothing for some time. And, tempers flare, and, it's a brawl. It's a free-for-all. And what are people going to do? They're going to jump in and protect their people. And it was terrible. And it should not have happened again. You don't put two groups like that together in one room. You don't do it. Why would you want to hang out with no protection unless you were going out looking for a street fight? That's what you wanted. Again, that doesn't do anything. But hate and hate, they don't mix. What would Dr. King say? The sister of MLK agrees with the president, by the way, upon Charlottesville, and very supportive of Donald Trump. That says a lot to me. She's definitely knowing that Donald Trump's not a racist. He didn't create this. He didn't start the fire. He hasn't shown anything to anybody other than maybe not saying quick enough, as Obama never alluded fast enough or identified ISIS as who they really were behind him. So there's accusatory. Presidents are not perfect. President Trump, not perfect. And what's happened, I know that he's upset about, and most Americans are saddened about. I have prayed about what's taken place there. In Barcelona, I've prayed about it. I mean, this is evil. And unfortunately, folks, there's evil in our world. But to lay blame and play the blame game on Donald Trump and on his supporters as being the breakdown of the moral fabric of our country is just wrong. To be able to alienate all the millions of people who came to the polls to vote for Donald Trump and to put us in a box of bigots, Nazis, and homophobes, and Islamophobes, and all this other garbage that they were spewing off before the election and after the election. They just continued. Continuation. Take down the monument. If you want to take down the monuments that makes you feel better, states want to decide that's what they got to do. Al Sharpton, they want to take down the Jefferson Memorial. I guess Washington's going to come down. Lincoln's going to come down soon. Pretty soon there's going to be nothing to visit in Washington, D.C. Let's take them down. I mean, we definitely know what happened in the Civil War. You do know what happened at Fort Sumter, South Carolina, on April 12th, 1861. The war began with the Confederates and the Union soldiers there. And the war ended, thankfully, in the spring of 1865, where Robert E. Lee surrendered the last major Confederate army under Ulysses Grant on April 9th, 1865. So, folks, we do know the Confederates lost. North and South, baby. But it's our heritage. And man, was it not a bloody war. This was one of the bloodiest of all wars. How many soldiers died in the Civil War? Approximately 620,000 soldiers died from combat accidents, starvation, and disease during the Civil War. By the way, this number that I mentioned comes from an 1889 study of the war performed by William Fox and also Thomas Leonard Livermore, but both men fought for the Union, and their estimate is derived from the exhaustive study of the combat and casualty records generated by the armies of 5 years of fighting. And a recent study puts the number of dead as high as 850,000. So it, again, do your research and check it out. I mean, we know who won the Civil War. The Northern armies were victorious, and the rebellious states returned to the Union.